Hey everyone, welcome to Ranchero. I am here with my lovely wife, Robin, and we're going to just have a quick little talk about something that Glenn Beck said on one of his shows just recently. He recently said that we should take our families and we should move to a small town or move out to the country. We should try to find a house with no internet access and no social media, and I just want to kind of briefly talk a little bit about that. Just kind of some of our experiences with that. He also talked about a few other things that we're going to touch on as well, but we have kind of lived that life. We have lived out in the small town or lived out in the country for much of our married life. We've been married now for about 20 years, and when we originally got married, we lived in a small town, and then we started having kids, and eventually we moved out to the farm, and we were very far away from town. So, we had this feeling like that was the important thing to do. That was what we should do. We should live out of town. We should live away from all of the bad things that go on in town and in the cities, and we should raise our kids out on a farm where they can learn good skills and learn how to be good people and not be exposed to some of the garbage that you find in the cities. Let's go ahead and play the clip and let's listen to what he had to say, and then let's talk about it.
Quite honestly, it's taken everything in me to not just pack up my entire house and move away to a very small town and live in a house that has no access to internet. If you can do that, you should. I do think you should. Live in a small town. But your problems are going to follow you because they're everywhere. But you need to do what you need to do to protect your family.
All right, so why did Glenn Beck say this? Why did he feel that it's important to take your family, try to move to a small town, preferably somewhere with no internet, no social media? Earlier in this discussion he was having, he was talking about how he just recently had an experience with one of his kids who had attempted suicide. And he contributed a lot of the problems that his kids were experiencing now to social media and a lot of the things that they were exposed to in public schools and through social media. So he had this experience with them, and he kind of feels like, now Glenn Beck does have a farm. I don't think he lives on the farm full time, but he does get a chance to go out to his farm. He talks about his farm, right?
Yeah, they've had farm experiences. And
so they've been able to have farm experiences. They go out to the farm, they work on the farm, and they talk about how great those experiences are. But I don't think they actually have moved out and live on the farm. So he says if he could do it, if he could have done it again in this discussion he's having, he would have just pulled his kids out of school and moved to a small town. So let's talk about our experience, because that's what we've done. That's what we've been doing for nearly, 15, 20 years now. So what's interesting is a couple years ago, and many of you probably don't know this, we actually had to do the opposite thing. So we've been on the farm, we've been raising our kids on the farm, and a couple years back, we ended up having to sell the farm and move to the big city. And part of that's because of work, part of that was because of other reasons, and part of it was because of our kids. So we've actually done the opposite thing. But I would say that ever since we've been here, what have we wanted to do?
get back to the farm.
Move back out to the farm.
Bad.
Get out of the city. It's there has been some really good things, but there's been some really bad things in being in town as well. So
and leaving the farm and coming to the city when it gets to everything, we are about, but we felt like we had to do it. So
yeah,
it's been interesting.
So we had these feelings, almost the opposite feelings at the time, that we needed to move somewhere where our kids could be closer to other kids. So it's kind of funny because I think generally his statement is true. I definitely think it is way better to be out in the country, be out of the big city, and be able to raise your kids that way. So I feel like that was the very best thing for our kids, all the way up to a certain point. So it was when our oldest daughter was at high school age, and our kids have always been homeschooled. So at a young age, Robin has always taught them, started off being their teacher when they were young.
Yep. I think we've homeschooled for 15 years,
Yeah.
really.
And so as soon as they became school age, Robin started teaching them. She created her own programs. She did her own homeschooling programs for them, catered to their needs. And as they got older, that kind of it more evolved into online private schools. So we were able to find some schools, and Robin really dug around and really searched, and
Yep.
and you found a online private school that you liked,
Yep.
and it was a Christian-based private school,
Yep.
and so
Accredited and met all of our needs.
yeah,
it's
so
been great.
that's right. There's a lot of things that are tricky when it comes to homeschool. You want them to be able to still like be accredited, get a degree, be able to get into college if they want to go to college. So it gets tricky. So we found a great thing, but it costs us money every month.
Yeah, a lot.
But they're able to watch class live, and they can rewatch class, and it's been great for them. And they have performed really well. But I still remember a few years ago sitting there watching my kids as they're getting older, realizing we live way out in the country. The town that was closest to us, I think the population was said was like 114. It was a very small town. And there were very, very few kids in this town. So if they wanted to hang out with friends, if they wanted to do something, it was a lot of work. We really had to travel. We had to try to set things up. Fortunately, we had them involved in a lot of activities.
Yeah, they were involved in 4-H, and they took tennis lessons, and they were really involved in our church, but it was still hard for them to make really good friends, maybe, for not seeing them that often.
Yeah.
And really, there weren't very many kids either. So
Yeah.
we felt like something was lacking there.
What's interesting is we kind of had gotten them. So Glenn Beck was like talking about taking the smartphones away, and it was almost like we had gotten them these smartphones just so they could be have more of an opportunity
Be a
to
little
talk to
connected.
friends and be connected to friends, because that was the biggest thing. Being raised on the farm, being around the animals was really good for them, but they were still missing some things. And where we were in Georgia, right now we actually live on the west. We're in the West Coast area, and we were in the Southeast before. But being down in Georgia, the public schools will not allow you to play sports if you're not fully enrolled in the school. You can't go to the dances or the proms. You can't be involved. You can't just take one class at the school. So it was really difficult for the way we were trying to educate the kids. Fortunately, we've been able to move to an area where it's a state that's very homeschool friendly. You can actually dual enroll your kids. You can be homeschooled part of the time in the public school if you want to be. Or you can just have your kids participate in the sports in the area where you live. And that is amazing, because that was one of the things they were missing out on. They were missing out on being able to play sports, which is something I did and Robin did. And we wanted to be able to not pass up that opportunity. All of a sudden, our oldest is now leaving and going to college. And so we did not want to have that regret of, hey, they grew up on the farm and had this great life, but they never got to hang out with friends. They never got to go to a school dance. They never got to play school sports. And we're like, but the schools are so sketchy now. So how do we do that? So fortunately, we found an area where there was some really good opportunities for them. And it's a very family friendly area, but it's still, I think, what is it? The population of where we're living now is close to 100,000 just in this one city. And it used to be a very small town. It used to be a rural farming community. In the last 5-10 years, it's exploded. So what are our thoughts? Are we glad that we did that? Are we glad that we moved to town? Because honestly, now what we are doing is we are now packing up to get ready to head back out to the farm. Yeah. So are we glad we did that? Are we going to follow what Glenn Beck's advice is? What do you think? What is your thoughts on all that? I don't know. Like what are we doing here? I don't even know sometimes.
Me either. Oh gosh. I think that there's different phases of life, and I think that the phase when the kids were little, growing up on the farm, riding horses, playing with goats and chickens and bunnies and whatever else we had, I think that was great for them at the time. And then I think they got to be upper middle school age, high school, and then they needed something else. So even though there was still a lot of good things about staying on the farm, I think that they would have missed out on some really great opportunities if we hadn't done it. Yeah. But I also think now that our oldest has gotten through high school, then maybe we can backtrack a little bit and get to a...
Because our youngest actually was very young when we left the farm. And so it's been, it's how long is it? It's almost been 3 years now. And she doesn't remember a lot of the things from the farm. But we want her to still have that same experience. So it's this battle because you get so many good things from being out on the farm. But you miss out on a few things. But we had him involved. We did barrel racing and the 4-H, like you talked about, and rodeo and all these different things that were great for them as well. But there's been some really good things that they've been able to do since we've been here. And again, we found a community where there's a lot of people that are very, very much like us and our standards and our and their kids are good kids. So we didn't worry about them going out and, having to be around a bunch of kids trying to do bad things on the weekends or anything. So that was a fortunate thing where we are. And our oldest daughter graduating now, we're grateful that she had an opportunity to go to prom. She had an opportunity to play tennis for the high school. Yeah. She had all sorts of good experiences she would have never had before. But man, it's really hard to have the best of both worlds.
You really can't. It's like it's either you have some good from this and you miss out on some good from the other. You can't have it all at one time. You can't have the best of everything.
That's right.
Maybe at different times in your life you can have different things, but...
Even for church, we would drive 45 minutes to church when we lived out in the country. Here, it's 2 minutes down the road. And there's a lot of youth that they're able to hang out with and be around. And so there's those really good things that way. But we've also seen some of the negative side of being in town and being around everyone else. It is a competition. There is all these people you're seeing that look like their life is so great and they have so much money and they're able to do all these wonderful things and your life is not as great.
You definitely compare yourself a lot more living in town.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Even and the kids, I think it's easier to do in town.
Yep. And when you're out on the farm, nobody really cares. Like it's, we always keep our place clean and tidy, but if I drive an old beat up truck and somebody else has a nice truck, we really don't. It doesn't matter to us. But around here, it's a big comparison. Not always, but a lot of times with different things. So, and you know what? That's become a huge problem with social media as well. The kids are really easily able to compare themselves to other kids. And that's probably a whole nother topic. But that's something he mentioned in this podcast that he was talking about. If he wishes he could just take his family and pull them out of school and move to a small town. And while I think there are some great teachers out there, there's some great people that are great educators out there. I think as a whole, the public schools is a very difficult situation for most of the kids. When we moved here and we moved to town and we said, you know what, if there is a place where we could go and we could send them to public school, it would have to be here.
Yep. Thought it would be safe.
Yeah, and we tried it. And it didn't last but a few days. And our kids realized, I don't want to have anything to do with this.
They didn't like it. I didn't like it. No. It definitely wasn't right for us.
No, absolutely not. So what we've been able to do with the homeschooling and the online private school has been great. It is an expense and it is a sacrifice.
But it's totally worth it.
Yeah, absolutely worth it.
Yep.
So Glenn Beck talks a little more about the schools. Let's just play a quick clip about what he has to say about the schools.
What's being taught in schools? They are lies. Don't send your kids to college. What are you sending your kids to college for? Honestly, unless they want to be a doctor, unless it's something that but to find themselves? Oh, I'll help you find yourself. Not going to spend $50,000 a year or more so you can go find yourself. Because you know what? I know what you'll find. The exact opposite of everything that your mother and I have tried to teach you and just tried, prayed, struggled, stayed awake every night. How do we make sure we plant this value or virtue deep inside of them? That's what you're going to find when you go to college, the opposite of that. And the people that we've prayed to make sure our kids never meet, we'll be paying their salary. We know what's happening in our schools, and we still have our kids in schools. Some people just cannot do it, but there are other options. You've got to get your kids out of these schools. We're in an emergency situation.
Part of that makes me chuckle a little bit when he talks about we've been trying to keep our kids away from these people, and now we're paying to send them to the very people we're trying to keep them away
and their salary.
And I think a lot of what he's saying is true. Is it 100% true across the board? I think there are some good schools out there. I think there's some schools that have some good like-minded people. There's probably some great trade schools for kids. But to just go to a big party school just to waste 4 years and all your parents' money, absolutely not. No way. And again, with the public schools, it's a very similar situation. I mean, there's probably some very good schools in some areas out there, and as a whole, there's probably a lot of really bad ones. I mean, we never wanted to send our kids to the schools. All we were hearing was horror stories about students beating up the teachers and all of the garbage that they were being exposed to. And I mean, it's obviously you can't shelter your kids forever, but they don't need to be exposed to some of this stuff at a young age like they are now. So,
and we pretty much every situation our kids have been in where they've met other parents and things like that, we have so many people asking us how our kids are so good.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think if they had been in school, that they would have turned out a lot different.
Yeah, there would have been a lot more bad influence. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they've really, having seen how some of the other kids are, they really appreciate how they were raised, and all the opportunities they've had. And I feel like they've really gained a very good education compared to most too. Yep. So our oldest daughter, she graduated with a 4.0. And she was also, because she was able to participate in sports, she just participated in tennis and track. She was, what was the award she just received?
Academic All-State.
So she was the Academic All-State. There was her and one other kid in the whole school on the track team that received that award. And that's pretty good. And I feel like she's lucky too, because she was able to get accepted to a really good college. Mm-hmm. Where she's going to be around other like-minded people. So that was important to us. We almost felt like if it wasn't that, then it's almost not worth going to school. Yeah. Waste a bunch of money just to go find yourself, like Glenn Beck said.
And I don't think our kids need to go find themselves.
No.
I don't feel like they need to find themselves. I feel like they know who they are.
Yeah, they have really come to know who they are. So we've had to kind of change who we are as we moved to town. Yeah. We had to regain our identity a little bit. And like I said, all we've wanted to do is get back out to the farm and get back out to the small town country life. And with my work, it would be really hard to do that right now. I'm in construction, and for me to have to travel far and what I'm doing right now, it would be difficult. So, but that's about to change. We're working towards going back, because we really have seen both sides of it. And we really see the value in raising our kids on the farm. But at the same time, we've seen the value of them having these other opportunities as well. But those opportunities aren't everywhere. So just because something is right now doesn't mean it will be right next year or in 5 months or in 2 months. It may change. So one of the final aspects of his podcast we want to talk about was his warning against social media. And I guess that's something that everybody knows has kind of become a challenge and an issue for kids these days, and for adults as well. We've really seen it as we have moved to town. We moved here. We're going to give our kids opportunities to hang out with friends and go do some things, go bowling, go to the movies, do the things that they necessarily didn't get a chance to do living out in the country, because those things just weren't around. And so now that we're here, what is it we're seeing?
Seeing a lot of the other kids just want to hang out at their house on the weekends and not get together in a group and not go out and do fun things.
They want to be on their phone on a Friday night looking at social media, and it's crazy. It is crazy. So let's listen real quick to what he has to say.
Social media. What is happening with social media is just the beginning. You now couple it with AI, and your kids don't stand a chance. Snapchat and TikTok, the worst. Get your kids off of them. Takeaway, if you haven't given your kids a phone yet, mine needed them when they turned, 15, because they had to go to school, and they had to have a phone, they had to have devices. They should have pulled them from the school at that point, just said, nope, you know what, you're not going. But I didn't. And they've changed because of social media. It is dangerous, and it is killing our kids.
So, yeah, one of the other things we've noticed too with the social media thing is now that our daughter's going to college and they're choosing roommates and they're starting to have people reach out to them. It's all through social media. The first thing that once they chose their roommates, the first thing their roommates said was, "Hey, send me your Instagram account." Mm-hmm. And our daughter's like, "I don't have an Instagram. What do I do? They're going to think I'm weird." Yeah. And it's like, so we're like, do we set up an Instagram for her?
I know. So we thought it was a good thing that she was on Instagram. Then now all of a sudden it's like she's behind or something, where she can't socialize, or I don't know.
It's the only way that the kids are asking each other out on dates now is through social media.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a struggle because for us it was like we'd call each other and be like, "Hey, you want to get together?" All right, we get together, and that's how we communicate now. I mean, sure, we had some phone calls and long conversations that way, and a few texts, but now it's just to a whole nother level of just texting and through social media, and most of it's fake. Yeah. Most of it's fake. Yeah. The kids that are out there posting stuff on social media, it's not reality. So, but it's hard when kids are young to differentiate what is and what isn't real. Mm-hmm. And whose life really is great and whose is not. And so, yeah, it is. I think it's a major issue. And like you said, now that AI is coming into the mix of things, it's going to become even more challenging. So what do we do about it? Maybe that's something we discuss in one of our future videos. But there you go. Move out to the country, move out to a small town if it's right for you. If it's right for you at this time, for your family, for your kids. Sometimes you have to really think about it. You have to pray about it, and you have to decide what's right for you and your family at this time in your life. And just because it's right now may not be right later, and it may become right again, just like we're seeing it for us. Maybe I should ask you, what is your preference?
Oh, definitely a small town or living in the country, like 100%. Yeah. There's a few nice things about living in town, but they got old pretty fast. Yeah,
you're like, wow, it's so nice to be so close to, you know, the stores or whatever.
I can be at a grocery store in 4 minutes or whatever, or to a really great clothing place in 5 minutes. But
yeah, because one of our farms we lived on, we were 45 minutes from the closest gas station. So we had to keep fuel at our farm because you'd get halfway between the gas station and home and realize you don't have enough gas to get back. Yeah. So, that was kind of far out.
Yeah, but we learned how to be prepared there. Yeah. So there was some good things.
But I could have a fuel tank at home, so I could do it.
Not here.
But I can't even store gas where we are now. So, I think it is nice to have the convenience of the stores and whatnot. But oftentimes we're in traffic just as long as it took us to drive from the country into town. Mm-hmm. So I definitely would prefer to be out in the small town in the country, because really, what do you need from the stores? What is it that you really need? Go to town, get your groceries, grow your food. Mm-hmm. We don't need all these things that we think we have to be so close to town for. Yeah, there's been a couple times I've been glad we've been fairly close to a hospital. There's been those few times. If you're getting older in age and your heart's not working so good, you might not want to be really far from a hospital. But that's another good reason to keep yourself healthy and try to avoid, midnight runs to the hospital when you're bleeding to death. But I survived. I hope you all have liked this video. I hope it was something that you found informational. I enjoyed having Robin here with me, so at least you have a pretty face to look at instead of mine. But we appreciate you joining in with us. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What are your thoughts about all this? What do you think? Is moving out to a small town, is that the right thing to do? or is living in town the right thing to do? I mean, what is it? What are your thoughts on all of this? Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. We'll just have to see how we can make this all mesh together somehow, because there's a lot of good both ways and there's a lot of bad both ways. So.